Hello, Rama Pupodu. Hope all are in good health, feeling great, wonderful, having a happy and peaceful life. Now let's continue with Sub Registrar Narayana Iyer. Narayana Iyer was posted as Sub Registrar in a place away from Tiruvannamalai. He could not go to Bhagwan whenever he wanted. He was like a suckling baby, longing to be back with the mother. As there were hardly any taxis or buses in those days, Narayana Iyer sometimes hitchhiked on lorries as mode of transport to reach Bhagavan and even to go back home. Once he came to the ashram at 8:30 in the night. He had a house opposite the ashram. He hurried into the ashram without even taking his bath or his food. He stopped at the ashram office to pay his respects to Niranja Ananda Swami, the Sarva Adhikari, who was having a discussion with some people. Narayana Iyer was surprised because normally the people in the ashram went to bed by 8. The Sarva Adhikari called out to him and said, "Narayana Iyer, come here. Bhagavan has had an accident. He has broken his collarbone, so we have shifted his bed outside the old hall, in between the old hall and the small well. Prostrate to him from a distance and then go away. Do not disturb him." Narayana Iyer recalled, "Had they not mentioned that Bhagavan had a fracture, I would not even have gone there. But knowing that Bhagavan had a fracture, how could I not go there?" Obeying Niranja Ananda Swami's instructions, he went in steadily like a cat and prostrated to Bhagavan from a distance. But Bhagavan called out to him, "Narayana Iyer, come here." He was surprised because he thought no one could hear him. Bhagavan then added, "Narayana Iyer, I can see that you are trying not to make any noise." Then, lying on the couch, he said the strangest thing. "Narayana Iyer, come and sit next to me." Perhaps he was the only other person to have ever sat next to Bhagavan on his couch. The other person was me, but I was only an infant. Perhaps I was 1.5 years old when I did so. Bhagavan said, "The native doctor has said that the bandage should not be moved. I wanted to see you and talk to you." Narayana Iyer was afraid that the Sarva Adhikari would tear him to pieces if he saw him sitting on Bhagavan's couch. But in a fraction of a second, he overcame that fear and went to Bhagavan. As he sat down, Bhagavan continued, "This morning I was going up the hill. A dog was chasing a squirrel, and so I put my walking staff between the two of them. I then slipped and broke my collarbone." A devotee who is also a native bone setter made a paste of leaves and black gram and applied it with the plea that I do not move my arm. Narayana Iyer was very moved about how Bhagavan paid as much heed to the plight of the squirrel as he did to the plea of his devotee, the bone setter. Narayana Iyer rarely missed coming to the ashram on Bhagavan's birthday. Once he was 60 miles away. He travelled by one lorry after another and at last reached the ashram at 1 in the morning. He had to leave the ashram at 5 the same morning because he had to report for work at 9. While taking leave, he prostrated before Bhagavan, who held out his hand and said, "Come, Narayana Iyer, you should have something to eat." Bhagavan took him to the kitchen. They both looked into the vessels, but there was nothing there because everything, including the floor, had been cleaned with water the previous night. Bhagavan went into the small room inside the kitchen and looked into all the pots and pans. Fortunately, he found a handful of almonds. As he came out, he noticed that the kitchen fire was almost out, so he put more firewood into the fire and then set a frying pan on it. He poured some ghee into the pan, then added the almonds and roasted them. He also added some salt and chili powder. He put the almonds on a leaf and gave it to Narayana Iyer, saying, "How can you go without eating anything?" It seemed heavenly to Narayana Iyer, though he could not believe what was happening. He obeyed Bhagavan automatically. Then Bhagavan got up, looked for a newspaper and another leaf, and wrapped up the rest of the almonds in them. He packed it beautifully, just like they do in restaurants. He gave it to Narayana Iyer, saying, "When you go home, Lalita, Narayana Iyer's wife, and your children will ask, 'What have you brought us from Bhagavan?' Take this and give it to them." As Narayana Iyer narrated this, he wept copiously and said, "How can I not remember these special things? Who will believe it when I talk about it?" When Narayana Iyer's eldest daughter was to be married, Narayana Iyer had no money for the betrothal. According to Hindu tradition, there is a ceremony and a puja for which a few things are necessary. Narayana Iyer's wife said, "Why don't you go and appeal to Bhagavan?" He replied, "I will never go and appeal to Bhagavan for material things." She prayed to Bhagavan silently, telling him of the importance of the betrothal. Let's continue in the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. Rama Rama Pupodu.